The boot hit the wheelchair hard enough to send it spinning sideways into the concrete wall. Chief Petty Officer Maya Reeves didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't even look up at the 3 Army Rangers standing over her with fists clenched and smiles that said they'd already won. Staff Sergeant Kyle Brennan kicked again, harder this time, and the chair tipped. She went down shoulder first onto the cold floor of the trauma bay at Fort Carson, Colorado. March 15th, 2024, 7:30 p.m. No witnesses, no cameras, no help coming. Just 3 men who thought a woman in a wheelchair couldn't fight back. They were about to learn exactly how wrong men can be. But before we show you what happened when Maya Reeves stopped being silent, do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because you won't want to miss a single second of this story. And drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from, so we can see just how far Maya's story travels. Now let's get into what really happened that night. Maya had arrived at Fort Carson 6 days earlier with orders nobody understood and a clearance level that made the base administrators nervous. The paperwork said instructor liaison, but didn't specify what she'd be teaching or who she'd be teaching it to. When she rolled through the main gate in that stripped-down civilian wheelchair, the MP on duty had stared like she'd shown up in a clown costume. "You sure you got the right base, ma'am?" She'd handed him the envelope without a word, watched him read it twice, watched his face change when he saw the signature at the bottom. Yes, ma'am. Welcome to Fort Carson." She'd rolled through without thanking him, because she hadn't come here to make friends. The Integrated Combat Medicine Training Facility sat at the northwest corner of the base, a sprawling complex of simulation bays, classrooms, and equipment storage that smelled like disinfectant and old blood, the synthetic kind they used for trauma drills. Maya knew the smell, had spent enough time bleeding real blood in real places to recognize the difference. She'd positioned herself outside Bay 3 on that first morning, watching. Just watching. The instructors ran their drills like men who'd forgotten why they were teaching in the first place. Sloppy tourniquet applications, inadequate pressure on arterial bleeds, chest seals applied without clearing the wound channel first. "Who the hell is that?" Staff Sergeant Kyle Brennan had noticed her first. 38 years old, Ranger qualified, 2 deployments to Afghanistan, and a chest full of ribbons that he wore like armor against anyone who questioned him. He'd walked over slow, making sure everyone saw him approach the woman in the wheelchair. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Maya had looked up at him, didn't smile. "No." "You lost?" "No." "Then maybe you want to explain what you're doing in a restricted training area?" She'd pulled the second envelope from the bag strapped to her chair and handed it to him. Watched him read. Watched his jaw tighten. "Instructor liaison," he'd read aloud. "Observational capacity." He'd looked down at her. "You're here to watch?" "That's correct." "Watch what exactly?" "Your training protocols." He'd laughed, short and sharp. "Our protocols have been keeping soldiers alive for 20 years. I think we're good." "The paperwork says I observe, so I'll observe." That's when Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb had joined them. 41, leaner than Brennan, but meaner in the eyes. The kind of man who enjoyed having power over people who couldn't fight back. "Problem, Kyle?" "No problem. Just welcoming our new observer." Brennan had smiled then, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "She's going to watch us work, make sure we're doing it right." Webb had looked her up and down, let his gaze linger on the wheelchair. "That's real nice. Always good to have oversight, especially the kind that can't get in the way." Maya hadn't responded, had just turned the chair and rolled toward the observation area. Behind her, she'd heard Webb mutter, "What's next? Blind guys teaching marksmanship?" Brennan's laugh had followed her all the way across the bay. By day 3, they'd stopped pretending to be professional. "Excuse me, ma'am." Corporal Travis Holden had bumped her chair while carrying equipment past. 26, eager to impress the senior NCOs, stupid enough to think cruelty was the same as strength. "Didn't see you there." The chair had rolled back a foot. Maya had repositioned without comment. "You know," Webb had said, loud enough for the trainees to hear, "maybe we should paint that thing bright orange. Safety hazard, having it blend in with the floor." Laughter from 3 soldiers. Silence from the rest. Maya had pulled out her notebook and written something. Brennan had walked over, leaned down close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. "What are you writing? A complaint?" "Observations." "Observations." He'd straightened. "Let me give you an observation. You're in the way. This is a combat medicine facility. We train soldiers who have to run into gunfire and save lives under pressure. You see any wheelchairs on the battlefield?" She'd looked up at him. Her voice had been flat, empty of emotion. "I've seen plenty." Something had flickered in his eyes then. Confusion, maybe. But he'd pushed past it. "Then you know this isn't the place for them." He'd walked away before she could respond. Not that she would have. Day 4 had brought the locker room incident. Maya had been alone in Equipment Storage Bay 2, conducting an inventory of trauma supplies. The official inventory, the one the base kept on paper, said they had 47 combat application tourniquets in stock. She'd counted 31. 16 missing. That was enough to kill people. She'd been photographing the discrepancy when the door had locked behind her. "Well, well," Webb's voice. "Look who's working late." Maya had turned. All 3 of them. Brennan, Webb, Holden. "Door shouldn't have locked," she'd said. "Yeah, that's weird," Brennan had smiled. "Maintenance issue probably. Happens all the time." They'd spread out, not surrounding her exactly, but close enough. Strategic positioning. They'd done this before, she'd realized. Maybe not to someone in a wheelchair, but they knew how to corner prey. "You've been here almost a week," Webb had said. "Haven't seen you write a single positive observation." "I document what I see." "You see problems," Brennan had added. "That's all you see. Problems with our training, problems with our equipment, problems with our instructors." "If there weren't problems, I wouldn't be here." Holden had laughed at that. "She thinks she's some kind of inspector, coming in here to judge us." "I don't think anything," Maya had said. "I have orders. I follow them." Webb had moved closer. "Orders from who exactly? Because I looked you up, Chief Petty Officer Reeves. You know what I found?" She'd waited. "Nothing. Your service record is locked tighter than classified documents. No unit assignment, no deployment history, no explanation for why you're in that chair." He'd crouched down to eye level. "So either you're somebody important, or you're somebody's charity case." Maya's hands had stayed relaxed on the armrests. Her breathing hadn't changed. "I'm betting charity case," Webb had continued. "Wounded Warrior Program. Give the disabled vet a fake job so she feels useful. Let her pretend she's still part of the team." "You done?" Maya had asked. "Not even close." Webb had reached out, grabbed one of the wheels, and shoved. The chair had rolled backward into a stack of equipment crates. Not hard enough to tip it, but hard enough to make the point. "Careful," Brennan had said, voice dripping false concern. "Don't want her filing an accident report." Holden had circled behind her. She'd felt his hands on the push handles. "Let's help her find the door," he'd said. They'd started wheeling her toward the exit, fast enough that the turns jarred her spine, rough enough that when they hit the doorframe, the impact shot through her shoulders. "There you go," Webb had said, releasing the wheel. "All the way out. Much safer out here." The door had shut. Maya had heard the lock click. She'd sat there for 3 full minutes, breathing steady, staring at the closed door. Then she'd pulled out her phone and made a single call. "It's me," she'd said when the line connected. "They're escalating. Should be ready within 48 hours. The voice on the other end had asked a question. "No," Maya had answered. "Let it play out. I need documentation, not intervention." She'd hung up and rolled back toward the main facility. Somewhere behind her, in the locked storage bay, a small LED light had blinked red on the trauma supply shelf. The camera she'd positioned 3 hours earlier had captured everything. Day 5 had been the complaint. Colonel Sarah Vance had called Maya into her office at 0900. Fort Carson's deputy commander for training operations, 52 years old, Silver Star from Iraq, and eyes that had seen enough bullshit to recognize it from across the base. "Chief Reeves." She'd gestured to the chair across from her desk, then caught herself. "Sorry, you're obviously—" "I'm fine here, ma'am." Vance had sat, folded her hands. "I received a formal complaint this morning from 3 of our senior medical training instructors, Staff Sergeant Brennan, Sergeant First Class Webb, and Corporal Holden." Maya had said nothing. "They're alleging that your presence is disrupting training cohesion, that you've been making unfounded accusations about equipment shortages and protocol violations, and that you've been, and I'm quoting here, creating a hostile work environment through aggressive observation tactics." Aggressive observation. Maya had almost smiled. Almost. "Is any of this true?" "Which part, ma'am?" "Any of it." Maya had met the colonel's eyes. "I've documented 17 protocol violations in 5 days. I've identified inventory discrepancies that suggest either gross incompetence or deliberate theft of medical supplies. And I haven't spoken more than 50 words to any of the instructors unless directly addressed." Vance had leaned back. "They say you're targeting them specifically." "I'm targeting substandard performance. If they're the ones performing substandardly, that's not targeting, that's documentation." "Chief Reeves." Vance's voice had softened slightly. "I need to ask you something directly. Are you being harassed?" The question had hung in the air. Maya had thought about the bumped wheelchair, the locked storage room, the comments about charity cases and safety hazards. She'd thought about Webb's hands on her wheels and Holden's laugh and Brennan's smile that said he thought he was untouchable. "No, ma'am," she'd said. Vance had frowned. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. Because if there's anything inappropriate happening, there isn't." The lie had tasted like brass, but Maya had swallowed it down because this wasn't the time. Not yet. Vance had studied her for a long moment. "All right, I'm going to tell Brennan and his crew that you're operating under my direct authorization, that your observations are part of a larger DoD initiative, and that they need to cooperate fully. Will that help?" "It won't hurt, ma'am." "But it won't help either." Maya had allowed herself a slight nod. "No, ma'am, it won't." Vance had stood. "I want you to know something, Chief. I don't know what's in your classified file. I don't know why you're really here. But I know 3 NCOs who've been in my command for a combined 19 years just filed a complaint about a woman who's been here less than a week. And that tells me everything I need to know about who I should be worried about." "With respect, ma'am, you should be worried about all of us." "Why is that?" "Because in about 48 hours, something's going to happen. And when it does, you're going to have to decide whether you believe the 3 men who filed that complaint, or the 1 woman who didn't." Vance had come around the desk. "Chief Reeves, if you know something is going to happen, I don't know, ma'am. I anticipate. There's a difference." "Then let me be clear. If anyone lays a hand on you, I want to know immediately. Maya had looked up at the colonel. You'll know, ma'am. Everyone will. She'd rolled out of the office before Vance could ask what that meant. That night, Maya had stayed late, deliberately. Sent an email to Brennan about needing to access the trauma simulation bay for protocol review. Made sure Webb saw her rolling toward the bay at 1900 hours. Made sure Holden overheard her tell another instructor she'd be working alone for at least 2 hours. The bait was set. She'd positioned herself in Bay 3, the largest simulation space, surrounded by medical training equipment, and empty. Had spent 30 minutes reviewing actual protocols on her tablet. Had waited. At 1923, she'd heard the footsteps. 3 sets. Heavy boots on concrete. No attempt at stealth. The door had opened. Brennan first, then Webb, then Holden. Working late, Chief? Maya hadn't looked up. Yes. All alone? Yes. Webb had walked past her, checked the corner where the security camera usually sat, the one that had been under maintenance for 3 days. He'd smiled. That's dangerous, he'd said. Woman alone in an empty facility. Anything could happen. Maya had saved her document, closed the tablet, set it carefully in the bag attached to her chair. What do you want? She'd asked. Brennan had come closer. We want you to understand something. This base, this facility, these training programs, they're not yours. You don't belong here. My orders say otherwise. Your orders are bullshit, Webb had snapped. Everyone knows it. You're a diversity hire. A box the brass needs to check so they can say they gave a disabled veteran a participation trophy. Maya had looked at each of them in turn. Brennan's clenched fists, Webb's tight jaw, Holden's nervous energy. Are you finished? She'd asked. No. Brennan had moved fast, grabbed the back of her chair, shoved it hard toward the wall. The impact had rattled her teeth. Maya had gripped the armrests, kept her head from snapping back. You need to leave, Brennan had said. File whatever report you want. Quit. Transfer. We don't care. But you don't belong here, and we're done pretending you do. Maya had straightened in the chair. Her voice had been ice. Move me again, and find out what happens. Webb had laughed. What happens? You gonna wheel over us? Roll away real fast? Last warning, Maya had said. Holden had stepped forward, emboldened. Or what? You can't even stand up. You think you scare us? That's when Brennan had kicked the wheelchair. Hard. Deliberate. The kind of kick meant to hurt. The chair had spun sideways, slammed the wall. Maya's shoulder had taken the impact. Stand up, Brennan had said. Come on. Stand up if you're so tough. Webb had kicked next. Different angle. The chair had tipped. Maya had gone down, controlling the fall as much as she could. But concrete was concrete, and 35 years of life didn't make bones softer. She'd hit the ground shoulder first, palms out, head tucked. Professional fall. Trained fall. Get up, cripple, Webb had said. They'd all laughed then. The sound had echoed in the empty bay. Maya had stayed down. Breathing. Thinking. Waiting. I said get up, Brennan had repeated. Or do you need help? He'd reached down, grabbed her ankle. That's when everything changed. Maya's hand had shot up, hooked his wrist, twisted. Brennan had sworn, tried to pull back, but her grip was iron. She'd yanked him off balance, used his momentum against him, and suddenly he was on the ground too. Webb had moved. What the? Her other arm had snaked out, caught his knee, pulled. He'd gone down hard. Holden had frozen. Run, Maya had said to him from the floor. He hadn't. He'd charged. Wrong choice. Maya had rolled, used her core to generate torque, and when Holden got close enough, she'd hooked his ankle with her forearm and sent him crashing face first onto the mat. Silence, except for 3 grown men gasping. Maya had pulled herself upright, sitting now, back against the wall, 3 Army Rangers scattered around her like bowling pins. "I warned you," she'd said quietly. Brennan had tried to get up. His wrist had buckled. Something was wrong with it. Something she'd done when she'd twisted. "You broke my—" he'd started. "I didn't break anything," Maya had interrupted. "I dislocated it. You can relocate it yourself, or wait for medical. Your choice." Webb had been holding his knee, face pale. You can't." "Can't what?" Maya had asked. "Can't defend myself? Can't use 40 pounds of upper body muscle you ignored because you were too busy staring at wheels? Can't fight back because I don't have working legs?" Holden had rolled onto his back, wheezing. "You're insane." "No," Maya had said. "I'm a Navy SEAL, and you 3 just assaulted a federal investigator." The words had landed like grenades. Brennan's eyes had gone wide. "What?" "My orders weren't to observe," Maya had continued. "They were to document, to see if the complaints about harassment, discrimination, and training negligence at this facility were real. Turns out they were." Webb had tried to stand, failed. "You set us up." "No. I gave you every opportunity to be professional. You chose this." The door had opened. Colonel Vance had entered, flanked by 2 military police officers and the base provost marshal. Behind them, Captain Rodriguez from JAG, tablet in hand, face grim. "Chief Reeves," Vance had said quietly, "are you injured?" Maya had checked herself. Shoulder would bruise, nothing else. "No, ma'am." "And these 3? "Minor injuries, self-inflicted through their attempt to assault me." Vance had looked at the 3 men on the floor. Her expression could have frozen fire. "Staff Sergeant Brennan, Sergeant First Class Webb, Corporal Holden," she'd said. "You are under arrest for assault on a federal officer, obstruction of a DOD investigation, and violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 128. You have the right to—" "This is bullshit," Brennan had interrupted. "She attacked us!" "Really?" Captain Rodriguez had stepped forward, turned his tablet around. Security footage played. Different angle than usual, higher quality. "Because this footage, from the maintenance camera that was never actually broken, shows 3 men kicking a wheelchair and attacking a disabled woman." "She's not," Webb had started. "Disabled?" Rodriguez had finished. "Chief Petty Officer Maya Reeves, DevGru operator, Silver Star recipient, 47 confirmed combat kills. Paralyzed from the waist down after an IED blast during a classified extraction in Yemen, where she saved 6 teammates while unable to walk." He'd looked up from the tablet. "She's more of a soldier sitting down than any of you will ever be standing up." The MPs had moved in, started cuffing. Maya had watched it all from the floor, hadn't moved, hadn't gloated. When they dragged Brennan past her, he'd looked down. "You planned this, all of it." "No," Maya had said. "I just knew men like you can't help themselves. Give them a target they think can't fight back, and they'll show you exactly who they are. You showed me. I documented it. Now you'll face the consequences." They'd hauled him out, still protesting. Vance had crouched down next to Maya. "How long?" "How long what, ma'am?" "How long have you been waiting for them to do something this stupid?" Maya had met her eyes. "Since the moment I saw Staff Sergeant Brennan watch a trainee apply a tourniquet wrong and say nothing. Men who don't care if soldiers bleed out because of bad training, They don't suddenly grow a conscience when they see a wheelchair. They see prey. I just let them think they were right. Your chair, Vance had said, looking at the damaged wheelchair against the wall. I have another one. Why didn't you report them after the storage room incident? Because documentation without pattern is just allegation. Now it's a pattern. Now it's proof. Vance had stood, offered her hand. Maya had taken it, hauled herself up using the colonel's arm for leverage, then reached for the backup wheelchair that Rodriguez had brought in. Once seated again, Maya had pulled out her tablet. Colonel, I need to brief you on the rest of my findings. Those 3 men were symptoms. The real disease is deeper. How deep? Medical supply theft. Training protocol violations that have likely resulted in preventable combat deaths, and a culture that punishes people for reporting problems. Vance had been quiet for a moment. Then, how many people knew you were really here to investigate? 3. You, the DOD Inspector General, and me. And you let them attack you anyway. Ma'am, with respect, I didn't let them do anything. I documented their choices. They made them freely. I just ensured there would be consequences this time. Somewhere in the distance, MPs had been loading 3 former instructors into vehicles. Their careers were over. Their freedom was next. Maya had rolled toward the exit, then paused. Colonel? Yes, Chief? That trainee, the one Brennan let apply the tourniquet wrong. Private First Class Chen. He deployed 6 weeks later. Died in combat from a femoral bleed. Vance's face had gone white. You're sure? I'm sure. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows why he really died. Not because of enemy fire. Because his instructors didn't care enough to teach him right. Maya had rolled out into the night air. Behind her, Colonel Vance had stood in the trauma bay, surrounded by overturned equipment and the ghost of 3 men's careers, and finally, started to understand exactly what kind of warrior had just walked through her base. The kind who didn't need legs to bring giants to their knees. The news traveled faster than wildfire. By 0600 the next morning, every soldier on Fort Carson knew that 3 senior NCOs had been arrested for assaulting a Navy SEAL in a wheelchair. The details got twisted in the retelling. Some said Maya had broken bones. Others said she'd used knives. One rumor claimed she'd killed a man, but the core truth remained. Don't underestimate the woman in the chair. Maya arrived at the facility at 0630 like nothing had happened. Same wheelchair, same gloves, same expression that gave away absolutely nothing. The trainees stared. They couldn't help it. She rolled past a cluster of them near the equipment lockers. One private, maybe 19 years old, started to say something. His buddy elbowed him hard. Don't, the buddy whispered. Just don't. Maya kept rolling. Inside the main training bay, the atmosphere had shifted. The other instructors, the ones who'd watched Brennan and his crew operate, who'd heard the comments, who'd said nothing, they were scared now. Not of Maya exactly. Scared of what she represented. Accountability. Lieutenant Marcus Chen, one of the junior medical instructors, approached her carefully. 32 years old, combat medic, 2 tours, decent man who'd learned to keep his head down. Chief Reeves, he said, voice low. I just wanted to say, what happened last night? Those guys had it coming. Maya looked up at him. You knew they were harassing people? Chen's face went red. I suspected. But you didn't report it. I didn't have proof. You had eyes, Maya said. That's proof enough. Chen stepped back like she'd slapped him. Maya rolled past without another word. The lesson had been delivered. That afternoon, Colonel Vance called an emergency meeting of all training staff. 23 instructors crammed into Conference Room B. Maya was already there when they arrived, positioned at the far end of the table where she could see everyone. Vance stood at the head. No preliminaries, no comfort. As of 0800 this morning, Staff Sergeant Brennan, Sergeant First Class Webb, and Corporal Holden have been formally charged with assault, obstruction of justice, and conduct unbecoming. They will face courts-martial within 60 days. They will be convicted. They will serve time. Silence, heavy and thick. Chief Petty Officer Reeves, Vance continued, is not here as an observer. She's here as a DoD investigator, examining this facility's training protocols, equipment management, and command climate. What she's found so far is deeply disturbing. An instructor in the middle, Captain Steve Morrison, 45, career officer, man who'd coasted on mediocrity for 2 decades, cleared his throat. Ma'am, with respect, is this really necessary? 3 bad apples doesn't mean 17 protocol violations, Maya interrupted. 41 equipment discrepancies, 23 documented instances of harassment that were reported to supervisors and ignored. And 1 dead soldier, who might still be alive if Staff Sergeant Brennan had corrected his tourniquet application instead of passing him through training. Morrison went pale. You can't possibly prove. Private First Class David Chen, Maya said. Graduated from this facility on September 14th of last year. Deployed to Syria on October 29th. Killed in action on November 12th from a femoral artery bleed that he failed to control with his tourniquet because it was applied too loose and too high. She pulled a tablet from her bag. I have his after-action report. I have the coroner's findings. And I have video footage from this facility, showing Staff Sergeant Brennan watching Chen apply that exact same tourniquet incorrectly during final testing, and saying, and I quote, "Good enough." Morrison said nothing. No one did. Good enough, Maya repeated. Those were the last words of instruction Private Chen received before he bled out in the desert. Good enough. Vance let the words hang. Then, Chief Reeves will be conducting a comprehensive review. Every instructor in this room will be evaluated. Every protocol will be examined. And anyone who has documentation of misconduct, by colleagues, by supervisors, by anyone, has 48 hours to come forward voluntarily. After that, when we find it ourselves, and we will find it, there will be no leniency. The meeting ended. The instructors filed out. Maya caught 3 of them glancing back at her with expressions she recognized. Not anger, fear mixed with respect. The kind soldiers reserved for people who can end careers with a sentence. 1 person stayed behind. Specialist Angela Rodriguez, 22 years old, combat medic trainee, 4th-generation Army, and eyes that had seen too much already. Chief Reeves? Her voice was quiet. Maya waited. I have something you need to see. Rodriguez pulled out her phone, pulled up a video, hit play. The footage showed the equipment storage bay, 3 days ago. Brennan, Webb, and Holden surrounding Maya's wheelchair. The audio was clear. Charity case. Doesn't belong here. The shove, the locked door, everything. Maya watched without expression. You filmed this? Yes, ma'am. Why? Rodriguez's hands were shaking. Because 3 months ago, they did something similar to me. Locked me in a storage room. Said if I reported it, they'd make sure I failed out. Said who would believe a 22-year-old female specialist over 3 decorated NCOs? She wiped her eyes. I didn't report it. I was scared. And then I watched them do it to you, and I thought if I had proof this time, maybe someone would finally stop them, Maya finished. Yes, ma'am. Maya held out her hand. Send me that video, and write down everything they did to you. Dates, times, witnesses, everything. Will it matter? They're already being charged for what they did to you. It matters, Maya said, because you're not the only one, and everyone who was hurt deserves to be heard. Rodriguez nodded, started typing on her phone. Maya watched her, saw herself at 22, saw every woman who'd ever been told to stay quiet, take it, don't make waves. Specialist Rodriguez, she said. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for being braver than the men who should have protected you. Rodriguez's eyes filled. She saluted, crisp, perfect, and walked out. Maya sat alone in the conference room, pulled out her own phone, made a call. It's deeper than we thought, she said when the line connected. We need to expand the investigation, and I need access to every harassment complaint filed at this facility for the last 5 years. The voice on the other end asked a question. Because I think Brennan, Webb, and Holden weren't the disease, Maya answered. They were just the most visible symptoms. She hung up, rolled toward the door, stopped when she saw Colonel Vance standing there. How long have you been listening, man? Long enough. Vance entered, closed the door. Chief, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. All right. When you took this assignment, did you know it would end with you being assaulted? Maya considered the question. I knew the probability was high. And you came anyway? Yes, ma'am. Why? Because the DoD has tried to fix places like this with policy changes and training seminars and sensitivity briefings. None of it works. You know why? Vance shook her head. Because predators don't care about policy, Maya said. They care about consequences, and there haven't been any. 3 men assaulted a federal investigator on camera, and they're still shocked they got arrested. That tells you everything about what they thought they could get away with. You used yourself as bait. I used myself as evidence. There's a difference. Vance sat down heavily. The Inspector General is going to want a full report. Everything you found, names, dates, patterns. I know. It's going to burn this place to the ground. Good, Maya said. Maybe they'll build something better in its place. You're not worried about retaliation? About someone deciding to finish what Brennan started? Maya's expression didn't change. Ma'am, I survived an IED blast that threw me 15 feet and severed my spinal cord. I performed combat medicine on myself and 5 other soldiers while unable to feel my legs. I coordinated a medevac extraction under enemy fire for 3 hours. Then I spent 2 years learning to fight from a wheelchair because I wasn't done serving. She leaned forward. So no, I'm not worried about retaliation. Let them come. I'll document that too. Vance studied her. You're not like anyone I've ever met. Yes, ma'am, I am. You just don't usually see us because we're too busy doing the job to worry about proving we can do it. Before Vance could respond, there was a knock. Lieutenant Chen stuck his head in. Colonel, we have a situation in Bay 4. They rolled and walked to the bay, found 6 instructors standing in a loose circle, all looking at the floor. At their feet, 16 combat application tourniquets, the missing ones from inventory. We found them, Chen said quietly, hidden in the ceiling tiles above the instructor office. Maya rolled closer, examined one. The packaging was intact, but the expiration dates had been altered. Someone had used a marker to change 2022 to 2025. Expired equipment, she said, being stored and potentially issued to trainees. Who put them there? Vance demanded. No one answered. Maya picked up another tourniquet, saw initials on the packaging tape. M.W. Marcus Webb. He was selling them, Maya said, taking the new ones, replacing them with expired stock, selling the new ones online. Military-grade tourniquets go for $80 each on the civilian market. 16 of them? That's almost $1,300. Chen looked sick. If a trainee deployed with one of these expired tourniquets? They'd fail in the field, Maya finished. And someone would bleed out. Vance pulled out her phone, started making calls. Maya watched the instructors' faces, saw the ones who'd known, saw the ones who'd suspected, saw the ones who were genuinely shocked. And she saw the one who was scared. Captain Morrison, the mediocre career officer who'd questioned her earlier. Maya rolled toward him. You knew. I didn't. You knew Webb was stealing equipment. You saw him in the supply room. You noticed the discrepancies. And you said nothing because reporting it would mean admitting you'd been negligent in your oversight. Morrison's face was ash. You can't prove that. I don't have to prove it, Maya said. I just have to ask the question during the investigation. And then you get to answer it under oath, where lying is a felony. She rolled past him, heard him make a small sound, almost like a whimper. By 1700 hours that day, Captain Morrison had submitted his resignation. By 1800, 2 more instructors had come forward with documentation of misconduct they'd witnessed and failed to report. The dominoes were falling. Maya worked through dinner, reviewed statements, cross-referenced dates, built timelines. Her phone rang at 2100. Reeves? Chief, it's Rodriguez. The specialist's voice was tight. I just got a message. Anonymous. It says, keep your mouth shut or you're next. Maya's hands stilled on the keyboard. Forward it to me, right now. Already did. Chief, I'm scared. I know. Where are you? My barracks room. Stay there. Lock the door. I'm sending MPS to your location. You're going into protective custody until we identify who sent that message. This is crazy. I just wanted to help, and you did, Maya said firmly. You did exactly the right thing. Now let me do my job and keep you safe. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Maya hung up, made 3 calls. Within 15 minutes, Rodriguez was in a secure room with 2 armed guards outside. Within 30 minutes, Maya had traced the message. It had come from a phone registered to an instructor who'd been on duty the night of the assault. Staff Sergeant Leon Kramer, 51 years old, 28 years in service, no disciplinary record, no red flags. Maya pulled his file, started reading. Kramer had served with Webb in Afghanistan. Same unit, same deployment. She dug deeper. Found a complaint filed 6 years ago by a female lieutenant. Harassment, intimidation. The complaint had been withdrawn after the lieutenant suddenly requested transfer to another base. Maya pulled that file too. Read the lieutenant's original statement before it was withdrawn. Staff Sergeant Kramer told me that if I pursued the complaint, he would make sure everyone knew I was a liar who slept her way into my commission. He said he had friends who would back him up. He said no one would believe me. The complaint had been filed against Kramer and 2 other NCOs. One was Marcus Webb. The other was Kyle Brennan. Maya sat back, stared at the screen. This wasn't 3 bad apples. This was an organized network. Men who protected each other, who covered for each other, who punished anyone who threatened their system. She picked up the phone. This time she called the Fort Carson Provost Marshal directly. This is Chief Petty Officer Reeves. I need you to place Staff Sergeant Leon Kramer under immediate arrest for witness intimidation and conspiracy. Chief, that's a serious allegation. I have documentation of a pattern of harassment going back 6 years. I have evidence of witness intimidation that occurred 3 hours ago, and I have reason to believe there are other members of this network still operating on this base." A pause, then, "I'll have him in custody within the hour." "Make it 30 minutes, Maya said. "And I want his phone, his computer, and access to his personal locker. Everything." "Understood." Maya hung up, looked at the clock. 2,200 hours. She'd been awake for 17 hours. Her shoulder ached from the previous night's impact. Her hands hurt from wheeling across the base all day. She didn't care, because somewhere in the files she was reading, in the patterns she was documenting, in the network she was unraveling, there were more victims. More Rodriguezes who'd stayed silent. More Chens who'd died because incompetent instructors were too arrogant to teach correctly. And Maya was going to find every single one of them. Her phone buzzed. Text from Colonel Vance. "Kramer is in custody. Found messages on his phone coordinating with 2 other instructors to discredit Rodriguez. All 3 are being arrested." Maya typed back, "How many more?" Vance's response took 2 minutes. "I don't know, but we're going to find out." Maya set the phone down, rolled to the window, looked out at Fort Carson at night. Lights scattered across the base. Thousands of soldiers sleeping, training, living. How many of them had been hurt by the system that was supposed to protect them? How many had stayed silent because they thought no one would believe them? How many had tried to speak up and been crushed? She thought about Private Chen bleeding out in the desert, about Rodriguez locked in a storage room, about the lieutenant who'd withdrawn her complaint and disappeared, about herself 24 hours ago on the floor of a trauma bay with 3 men standing over her, thinking they'd won. "You were wrong," she said to the empty room, to the ghosts of every predator who'd thought power meant immunity. "You were all wrong." Because Maya Reeves hadn't come to Fort Carson to observe. She'd come to burn down everything rotten and make sure it never grew back. And she was just getting started. The arrests happened fast. Too fast. By 0300 hours, Maya knew something was wrong. Kramer had been in custody for 4 hours when his lawyer showed up. Not a JAG officer, not a public defender, a civilian attorney from Denver who specialized in military defense cases and charged $500 an hour. Maya was still in her temporary office when Colonel Vance called. "Chief, we have a problem." "I'm listening." "Kramer's lawyer is demanding we release his client immediately. Claims we have no evidence of witness intimidation. Says the message to Rodriguez could have come from anyone using Kramer's phone." "His phone was in his possession. He admits that?" "Yes, but..." "Then he's responsible for what comes from it. That's basic chain of custody." Vance was quiet for a moment. "The lawyer knows that. But he's not arguing law. He's arguing politics. Says we're conducting a witch hunt. Says we're targeting decorated NCOs based on the allegations of one disgruntled investigator." Maya's hands tightened on the armrests. "One disgruntled investigator who has video evidence, witness testimony, and a dead soldier." "I know. But Chief, this lawyer didn't just show up. Someone called him. Someone with money and access. Kramer's a staff sergeant. He doesn't have the resources for this kind of representation." "Then who's paying for it?" "That's what I need you to find out." Maya hung up and pulled Kramer's file again. Went through his financial records. Standard military pay, nothing unusual. No large deposits, no unexplained income. She pulled Webb's records. Same thing. Brennan's. Clean. Then she pulled the file on the lieutenant who'd withdrawn her complaint 6 years ago. Lieutenant Sarah Mackenzie. Tracked her career after she'd transferred from Fort Carson. Mackenzie had left the Army 8 months after withdrawing the complaint. Honorable discharge. Medical reasons. The documentation listed severe anxiety and depression. Maya found Mackenzie's current contact information. Civilian now, living in Oregon, working as a paramedic. She made the call. It rang 4 times before a woman's voice answered. Hello? Is this Sarah Mackenzie? A pause. Who's asking? Chief Petty Officer Maya Reeves. I'm investigating misconduct at Fort Carson. Your name came up in connection with a harassment complaint from 6 years ago. The line went silent. Maya waited. I withdrew that complaint, Mackenzie finally said. Her voice was flat, empty. I know. I'm calling to ask why. Because I was smart enough to know when I was beaten. Ms. Mackenzie, 3 men have been arrested for assault and conspiracy. I have reason to believe they're part of a larger network. Anything you can tell me. They told me if I didn't withdraw, they'd destroy me, Mackenzie interrupted. Said they had photographs of me at a party in college. Drunk. In compromising positions. Said they'd leak them. Ruin my career. Make sure everyone knew I was just another attention-seeking slut who couldn't handle real military culture. Maya closed her eyes. Did they have those photographs? I don't know. Maybe. I was in college. I went to parties. But it didn't matter if the photos were real or not. The threat was enough. Who made the threat? Webb, Brennan, and a 3rd guy. Older, higher rank. He's the one who really scared me. Do you remember his name? Master Sergeant Frank Holloway. He was their supervisor. Told me he'd been in the Army for 26 years, and he'd seen 100 girls like me come and go. Said I could disappear quietly, or I could disappear loudly, but either way, I was disappearing. Maya wrote down the name. Master Sergeant Holloway. He's still at Fort Carson? I don't know. I don't care. I just wanted out. Ms. Mackenzie, if you were willing to give a statement. No! The word was hard, final. I left that life behind. I'm not going back. Not for you, not for anyone. There are other victims. People who need, then they can fight their own battles. I'm done. The line went dead. Maya sat in the silence. Thought about a lieutenant who'd been brave enough to file a complaint and broken enough to withdraw it. Thought about how many others there might be. She pulled up the personnel database, searched for Master Sergeant Frank Holloway. Found him, still at Fort Carson, currently assigned as Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Facility Commander. The Facility Commander. The person who oversaw all training operations. Maya's screen refreshed. New email. From Colonel Vance. Subject. Meeting. Now. Maya rolled to the colonel's office, found her waiting with 2 other people, a man in a suit, Army CID, Criminal Investigation Division, and a woman in uniform with eagles on her collar. Colonel Sarah Vance made the introductions. Chief Reeves, this is Special Agent Carr from CID, and Colonel Patricia Hammond, Facility Commander. Maya nodded, waited. Hammond spoke first. She was 58, gray hair pulled tight, eyes that had seen combat and politicians and learned to navigate both. Chief Reeves, I understand you've been conducting an investigation into training protocols and personnel conduct? Yes, ma'am. Without notifying me. My orders came from DOD. They specified minimal command notification to prevent interference. Hammond's expression didn't change. And in the course of this investigation, you've had 3 of my NCOs arrested, caused another to resign, and according to Colonel Vance, you're now suggesting there's a conspiracy involving my senior enlisted advisor. I'm not suggesting anything, ma'am. I'm following evidence. What evidence? Maya pulled out her tablet, brought up the files. Master Sergeant Holloway was the direct supervisor of Webb, Brennan, and Kramer during their deployment to Afghanistan. He was also the supervisor when Lieutenant Mackenzie filed her harassment complaint. That complaint was routed through him before it reached your desk. And it was withdrawn before you ever saw it. Mackenzie told me this morning that Holloway personally threatened her, told her she could disappear quietly or disappear loudly. Hammond's face went hard. That's a serious accusation. It's a credible statement from a former officer with no reason to lie. Special Agent Carr leaned forward. Chief Reeves, are you alleging that Master Sergeant Holloway has been operating a harassment ring for 6 years? I'm alleging that he's been protecting men who harass, assault, and steal from the military. I'm alleging that he's systematically silenced victims and covered up misconduct. And I'm alleging that he's doing it right now by paying for Kramer's civilian attorney. You have proof of that? Carr asked. Not yet, but I will. Hammond stood. Chief, Master Sergeant Holloway has 26 years of exemplary service, 2 Bronze Stars, a Silver Star. He's been my right hand for 3 years. If you're going to accuse him of criminal conspiracy, you better have more than the word of one disgruntled former lieutenant and a pattern that could be coincidental. Ma'am, with respect, Private Chen is dead because this facility's culture allowed incompetent instructors to pass soldiers through training with faulty skills. Specialist Rodriguez is in protective custody because she received death threats for telling the truth. 3 NCOs are in jail for assaulting a federal investigator. At what point does the pattern stop being coincidental and start being systemic? The room went silent. Colonel Vance spoke quietly. Patricia, I think we need to at least interview Holloway. Interview him about what? Doing his job? Supporting his soldiers? Supporting his soldiers by threatening their accusers, Maya said. By hiding evidence? By paying for defense attorneys with money that doesn't show up in his financial records? Hammond's eyes narrowed. You pulled his financial records? I pulled everyone's records. That's my job. Your job is to investigate training protocols, not conduct financial audits of senior NCOs. My job is to investigate misconduct, wherever it leads. Hammond turned to Carr. Special Agent, what's CID's position on this? Carr looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, if Chief Reeves has evidence of criminal activity, we have an obligation to investigate. She doesn't have evidence. She has theories. Then let me get evidence, Maya said. Give me access to Holloway's office, his computer, his phone records. If I'm wrong, I'll admit it in writing. But if I'm right... If you're right, you'll have destroyed the reputation of one of the best NCOs I've ever served with, based on a vendetta. Maya met Hammond's eyes. Ma'am, I have no vendetta. I have a dead soldier, traumatized victims, and a pattern of behavior that suggests command complicity. If you're refusing to investigate because it's inconvenient or uncomfortable, then you're part of the problem. The words hung in the air like a grenade. Hammond's face went white. How dare you? I dare because Private Chen can't, Maya said. Her voice was steel. I dare because Rodriguez is terrified. I dare because Mackenzie left the army, broken. And I dare because someone has to. Vance stepped between them. Chief, that's enough. No, it's not, Maya said. Not until we stop protecting careers and start protecting soldiers. Hammond stared at her for a long moment. Then she turned to Carr. Get a warrant for Master Sergeant Holloway's personal effects. Office, quarters, vehicles, everything. Carr blinked. Ma'am? You heard me. Chief Reeves wants evidence. Let's get her evidence. And if she's wrong, I want documentation of every false allegation she's made. And if she's right? Vance asked quietly. Hammond's voice was bitter. Then I've been complicit in a conspiracy for 3 years, and I'll resign before the sun sets. She walked out. The door closed hard behind her. Carr looked at Maya. You just made a very powerful enemy. I've had worse, Maya said. The warrant came through at 1400 hours. CID agents executed the search at 1430. Maya accompanied them. Holloway's office was meticulous. Awards on the walls, commendations framed and spotless, not a paper out of place. They found the first evidence in his desk drawer, a burner phone, prepaid, untraceable to any military account. Carr powered it on, scrolled through the messages. Chief, he said quietly, you need to see this. Maya rolled closer, read the texts. Kramer's lawyer is handled, $15,000 retainer paid. Keep him quiet until this blows over. Rodriguez needs to withdraw her statement. Find leverage, family, finances, anything. The investigator is a problem. Disabled, isolated, vulnerable. Handle it. Maya felt ice in her veins. Handle it? That's a threat against a federal officer. Carr kept scrolling, found more messages. To Webb before his arrest. To Brennan. To 3 other NCOs whose names Maya recognized from personnel files. This is a command network, Carr said. He's been coordinating everything. They searched deeper, found a locked file cabinet, forced it open. Inside, photographs. Dozens of them. Women in various stages of undress, at parties, in barracks rooms, some clearly drunk, some clearly unaware they were being photographed. And beneath the photographs, a ledger. Names, dates, amounts. He was blackmailing them, Maya said. Take the photos, threaten to release them, make them pay to keep quiet or withdraw complaints. Carr's face was gray. Some of these women are still active duty. Maya recognized 3 names, current instructors at the facility. Women who'd always been quiet, always kept their heads down, never caused problems, because they'd been paying Holloway to keep their secrets. How much? Maya asked. Carr added numbers. Over 6 years, nearly $200,000. Maya pulled out her phone, called Vance. We found it, she said. All of it. Holloway's been running a blackmail and protection racket. Photos, threats, payoffs. He's been silencing victims and protecting abusers for at least 6 years, probably longer. Vance's voice was shaking. How many victims? Maya looked at the ledger, counted names. 43 that we can document. Silence on the line. Colonel, Maya said. I'm here, I'm just... 43 soldiers. 43 people who came forward or tried to come forward. And we failed all of them. Not all of them. Some never reported. They knew the system wouldn't protect them. That's even worse. Yes, ma'am, it is. Vance took a breath. Where's Holloway now? CID is looking for him. He didn't show up for duty this afternoon. Find him. And Chief, when you do, I want him in handcuffs before he says a single word. Maya hung up, looked at Carr. We need to locate Holloway immediately. Already on it. I've got agents checking his quarters, his vehicle, known associates. Maya's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. If you want to talk, come alone. Parking lot behind Bay 6. 1 hour. Come with backup and I disappear. It was signed with 2 initials. F.H. Frank Holloway. Maya showed Carr. He wants to meet. It's a trap. Probably. You can't go alone. I have to. If he runs, we might never find him. And he knows where all the bodies are buried. Carr grabbed her arm. Chief, this man has been coordinating threats against federal investigators. The last message on his phone said you were vulnerable. He could be planning to kill you. Maya looked down at Carr's hand on her wheelchair. He released it. Special Agent, I've been shot at by Taliban fighters. I've had IEDs blow up under my feet. I've performed surgery on myself while paralyzed from the waist down. Frank Holloway doesn't scare me. He should. Men like him, when they're cornered, they're dangerous. Good, Maya said. So am I. She rolled toward the exit. Carr called after her. At least wear a wire. Maya stopped, turned back. Fine, but your people stay back. I see anyone within 100 yards, the deal's off. Carr fitted her with a microphone, tested it, made her promise to say a code word if she felt threatened. What's the code word? He asked. Maya thought for a moment. Chen. If I say Private Chen's name, you move in. That's your trigger? He's the reason I'm here. Seems appropriate. The parking lot behind Bay 6 was empty at 1600 hours. Maya positioned herself in the center. Clear sightlines in every direction. Nowhere for anyone to hide. Holloway appeared exactly on time. He walked slow, hands visible, no weapon showing. Chief Reeves, he said. Thank you for coming. You wanted to talk. Talk. He stopped 10 feet away, looked at her. Really looked. You're wondering why, he said. I know why. Money, power, control. Same reasons as every other predator. You think it's that simple? I think you've been destroying lives for years and pretending it was leadership. Holloway smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. You know what the problem is with the modern military, Chief? It's soft. We spend so much time worrying about feelings and fairness that we forget what we're supposed to be doing. Creating warriors. You created victims. I created order. Do you know how many complaints I've handled in 26 years? Hundreds. And you know how many were legitimate? Maybe 10. The rest? People who couldn't hack it. People looking for excuses. People who wanted special treatment. Lieutenant Mackenzie. Was she looking for special treatment? Mackenzie was a weak officer who slept with an enlisted man and then cried harassment when it didn't work out. That's a lie. It's the truth. But the truth doesn't matter anymore, does it? All that matters is the narrative, the poor victimized woman, the evil male NCOs. It makes everyone feel better to believe that story. Maya's hands were steady on her armrests. Why did you want this meeting? Because I want you to understand something before they arrest me. Everything I did to protect this institution. To protect the army from people who would destroy it from within. You destroyed it yourself. No, I preserved it. And 20 years from now, when the military is full of people who can't handle stress, who break under pressure, who demand safe spaces in war zones, you'll understand that men like me were the only thing standing between order and chaos. Men like you, Maya said quietly, are the chaos. Holloway's smile faded. You think you've won. You've arrested my men, found my records, exposed my operations. But Chief, you have no idea how deep this goes. Then tell me. Why would I do that? Because you're proud of it. Because men like you can't help themselves. You have to brag. You have to prove you're smarter than everyone else. Holloway studied her. You're trying to get me to confess. I'm trying to understand how 43 soldiers were victimized and no one stopped it. No one stopped it because no one wanted to. Every commander I've served under knew what I was doing, some explicitly, some implicitly. But they all knew, and they all benefited. Benefited how? No complaints reaching their desks, no harassment investigations, no bad press. I kept the facility running smoothly. I kept the metrics good, and all I asked in return was that they look the other way when I handled discipline my way. Maya felt sick. You're saying Command knew? Command always knows, Chief. They just pretend they don't so they can maintain plausible deniability. Colonel Hammond. Hammond's a true believer. She actually thinks she's running a clean facility. But her predecessor, Colonel Marcus Grant, he and I had an understanding. Don't make problems visible, and problems don't exist. Grant's retired now, Maya said. Yes, living in Florida on a very comfortable pension. Wouldn't want anything to disturb that. Maya understood. You have leverage on him, too. I have leverage on everyone, Chief. That's how systems work. Everyone has secrets. Everyone has something they don't want exposed. And the smart ones? They play along. I'm not playing along. No, you're not. And that's why you're dangerous. Holloway took a step closer. But you're also alone. One investigator. One woman in a wheelchair. You think you can take down an entire network? You think arresting me is the end? It's a start. It's nothing. I'll be replaced within a month. Someone else will fill the vacuum. Maybe they'll be smarter. Maybe they'll be more careful. But the system will continue, because the system protects itself. Not this time, Maya said. This time, there's evidence, witnesses, documentation. Evidence can disappear. Witnesses can be discredited. Documentation can be lost. You should know that, Chief. You were part of DevGru. You know how the military handles inconvenient truths. Maya's hands tightened on the armrests. You researched me. Of course I did, the moment you arrived. Maya Reeves, SEAL Team 6, Silver Star, 47 confirmed kills. Paralyzed in Yemen during a classified operation that officially never happened. He smiled. You've built your entire career on secrets and lies, and now you want to expose mine? My secrets protected national security. Yours protected predators. Semantics. Murder, Maya corrected. Private Chen is dead because you protected incompetent instructors. That's not semantics. That's homicide. Holloway's expression finally changed. Anger flickered beneath the surface. Chen was weak. He would have died eventually. In combat, in training, somewhere. Men like him don't survive war. He didn't survive peace either. Because of you. Because of himself. Because he wasn't good enough. Maya had heard enough. She reached for her phone. Holloway moved faster than she expected, had his hand on a weapon she hadn't seen. A knife. Small, but lethal. I wouldn't, he said. Maya froze. Calculated distances, her hands to his knife, her wheelchair to his position. The odds of CID intervening before he could strike. You're going to stab a federal investigator in a parking lot? She said. That's your plan? My plan is survival, and if that means one more body, so be it. Private Chen, Maya said clearly, loud enough for the wire to catch. Holloway frowned. What? I said Private Chen, because he matters, because his life mattered, and because you're about to join him. Holloway heard the footsteps too late. CID agents came from 4 directions, weapons drawn. Drop it! Carr shouted. Now! Holloway looked around, calculated his own odds. Then he smiled. You can't beat this, he said to Maya. You can arrest me, You can arrest 100 people, but the system will always protect itself. Maybe, Maya said, but not today. Today, you lose. They cuffed him, read his rights, dragged him toward the vehicles. As they passed Maya, Holloway leaned close. This isn't over. Yes, Maya said. It is. She watched them drive away. Then she sat alone in the parking lot as the sun began to set, thinking about 43 victims and one dead soldier, and how close the system had come to destroying itself from within. Her phone rang. Colonel Hammond. Chief Reeves. Hammond's voice was quiet. I owe you an apology. No, ma'am. You owe 43 soldiers an apology. I'm just doing my job. Nevertheless, I should have listened sooner. You listened when it mattered. A pause, then. Holloway implicated me in his confession. Said I knew about his operations. Did you? No. But I should have. That's worse. Maya didn't disagree. I'm submitting my resignation effective immediately, Hammond continued. Colonel Vance will assume command. Ma'am, it's already done, Chief. Some failures can't be fixed. They can only be ended. The line went dead. Maya sat in the darkening parking lot and thought about command responsibility. About how many people had looked away. About how one woman's courage to file a complaint 6 years ago had been crushed by a system designed to protect itself. And about how that same system had finally, after 43 victims and one dead soldier, started to crumble. Not because it wanted to, but because someone had forced it to. The victims started coming forward within 12 hours of Holloway's arrest. First was a former corporal named Jennifer Walsh. She'd left the Army 2 years ago after Holloway had shown her photographs of herself changing in the barracks. Photographs she hadn't known existed. He'd demanded $3,000 or the photos would be sent to her commanding officer with a note claiming she was soliciting. She'd paid. Then she'd requested discharge, medical separation for anxiety. I couldn't sleep, Walsh told Maya over the phone at 0700 the morning after the arrest. Every night I'd wake up thinking someone was watching. Someone was always watching. Maya listened, took notes, kept her voice steady. You willing to testify? Will it matter? He's already arrested. It matters because there are 42 others, and they need to know they weren't alone. Walsh was quiet for a long moment. Okay, yes, I'll testify. The second call came 20 minutes later, then a third, then 5 more. By noon, Maya had statements from 11 victims. By sunset, 19. Colonel Vance found her at 2200 hours, still working. Chief, you need to sleep. Maya didn't look up from her laptop. I need to document while memories are fresh. Memories will still be there tomorrow. Will the courage? Maya finally met Vance's eyes. These people are terrified, ma'am. They're coming forward now because the monster's in a cage. But fear has a way of creeping back. I need their statements now, while they still believe justice is possible. Vance pulled up a chair. Saturday. How many so far? 19 confirmed victims. 8 more who want to talk but aren't ready to go on record. And 3 who hung up when I identified myself. That makes 30 total, out of 43 in the ledger. The other 13 are probably too scared, or too broken, or both. Vance rubbed her face. Looked older than she had a week ago. The DOD Inspector General arrives tomorrow at 0800. They're bringing a full team. This is going to become a federal investigation. Good. Chief, when that happens, you lose control of the case. You become a witness, not the investigator. I know. Does that bother you? Maya closed her laptop. Ma'am, I didn't come here for control. I came here to stop the bleeding. If federal investigators can do that better than I can, then I'll hand it over and sleep for a week. You think they can? I think they have resources I don't. Subpoena power, multi-agency jurisdiction, political insulation. They can go after people I can't touch. Like Colonel Grant? Maya nodded. Holloway implicated him. Said Grant knew about the blackmail operation and authorized it in exchange for keeping complaint numbers low. If that's true, then a retired colonel committed conspiracy while in command. That's federal. That's prison time. Yes, ma'am. Vance stood, walked to the window, stared out at the dark base. You know what the worst part is? I believed in this place. I believed we were training warriors, teaching them to save lives. And the whole time, underneath it all, there was this rot. And I didn't see it. You weren't meant to see it. That's how systems like this work. They operate in the spaces between oversight, in the gaps where no one's looking. But someone should have been looking. I should have been looking. You're looking now, Maya said quietly. That counts for something. Vance turned back. Does it? Does it count for Private Chen? For the 19 women who were blackmailed? For all the people who left the army broken because we failed them? No, ma'am. It doesn't count for them. But it might count for the next soldier who needs help. The next person who wants to report. The next victim who needs to believe the system will protect them. You really believe that? After everything you've seen? Maya thought about the 3 men who'd kicked her wheelchair, about Holloway's knife, about Walsh's voice shaking over the phone. I believe people can change, she said. I believe institutions can be fixed. And I believe that every time we hold someone accountable, we make it a little bit harder for the next predator to operate. Vance almost smiled. You're an optimist. No, ma'am. I'm a realist. Optimists believe everything will work out. Realists know it only works out if you make it work out. The DoD Inspector General was a woman named Patricia Chen. No relation to Private David Chen, but Maya noticed her pause when she read his name in the files. This is extensive, Inspector General Chen said, reviewing Maya's documentation. She'd brought 6 investigators with her. They'd commandeered the main conference room and turned it into a command center. You've documented 17 protocol violations, 41 equipment discrepancies, and a conspiracy involving at least 6 NCOs, possibly extending to command level. Yes, ma'am. And you did this in 8 days while being assaulted, threatened, and harassed. Yes, ma'am. Chen set down the files, looked at Maya directly. Chief Reeves, I'm going to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Did you follow proper investigative protocols? Maya met her gaze. I followed the protocols I was given. Limited command notification, minimal interference, document everything. That's not what I asked. Did you, at any point, put yourself in unnecessary danger to obtain evidence? Define unnecessary. Did you knowingly allow yourself to be assaulted to build a stronger case? The room went silent. The other investigators stopped what they were doing, waited. Maya didn't hesitate. Yes, ma'am. Chen's expression didn't change. Explain. I had 2 options. Report the harassment early and potentially spook the network into hiding evidence, or wait until they felt confident enough to escalate. I chose the latter because I needed documentation of pattern and intent. Words can be denied. Actions can't. You used yourself as bait. I used myself as evidence. That's reckless. That's effective. We have 6 arrests, 19 victim statements, and documentation of a conspiracy that goes back 6 years. If I'd reported the first harassment incident, we'd have 3 NCOs claiming it was a misunderstanding and a single investigator with no corroboration. Chen leaned back. You know what bothers me most about this, Chief? It's that you're right. In a functional system, you shouldn't have to get assaulted to prove misconduct exists. But we don't have a functional system. We have a broken one. And you exploited that brokenness to fix it. Yes, ma'am. Don't do it again. I won't have to. You're here now. Chen almost smiled. You're assuming we're going to fix it. You're assuming you have a choice, Maya said. This story is going to break. Reporters are already calling Colonel Vance's office. Social media is picking it up. Someone leaked the Holloway arrest. In 72 hours, this becomes a national scandal. Your only choice is whether you get ahead of it or get buried by it. Is that a threat, Chief? No, ma'am. It's a timeline. Chan studied her. You leaked it. I made some phone calls to journalists I trust, to veterans advocacy groups, to people who deserved to know that something was finally being done. You circumvented the chain of command. I ensured accountability. There's a difference. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to one of her investigators. Contact public affairs. Tell them we're going to need a press strategy. And get me the JAG officer handling the courts-martial. I want to know trial dates. She looked back at Maya. You're right. We can't bury this. So we're going to prosecute it harder and faster than any case this command has seen. I want Brennan, Webb, and Holden in front of a military judge within 30 days. Kramer and the other 2 within 45. And I want Holloway's trial to be public. Full transparency. No closed doors, no sealed records. What about Grant? Maya asked. The retired colonel? That's trickier. He's out of uniform. We'll need DOJ cooperation. But I'm going to recommend federal charges. Conspiracy, obstruction, abuse of authority. All of it. He'll fight. Let him. Discovery will be fun. Maya allowed herself a small smile. Yes, ma'am. The courts-martial started 3 weeks later. Brennan went first. His defense attorney tried to argue that he'd been provoked, that Maya's presence was disruptive, that her silence was aggressive. The prosecutor played the security footage, showed Brennan kicking the wheelchair, showed Maya on the ground, showed 3 grown men trying to drag a disabled woman across concrete. The jury deliberated for 40 minutes. Guilty on all counts. 3 years confinement. Dishonorable discharge. Reduction to private. Brennan's face when they read the sentence was pale, empty, like he'd never actually believed consequences would find him. Webb's trial was shorter. He tried to claim he was following Brennan's lead. The prosecutor brought in Specialist Rodriguez, put her on the stand, let her describe what Webb and the others had done to her 3 months before Maya arrived. They locked me in a storage room, Rodriguez said. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. Told me if I reported it, they'd make sure I failed out, that no one would believe a female specialist over 3 decorated NCOs. And I believed them, because I'd seen what happened to other women who reported. They disappeared. They got transferred. They got broken. Why are you testifying now? The prosecutor asked. Because Chief Reeves showed me that silence doesn't protect you. It protects them. And I'm done protecting people who hurt me. Webb got 4 years. Dishonorable discharge. Forfeiture of all pay and allowances. Holden pleaded guilty. Took a deal. 2 years in exchange for testimony against Holloway. The prosecutor agreed because Holden's testimony filled gaps in the timeline, showed how Holloway had recruited young NCOs, trained them to identify vulnerable targets, taught them how to exploit weaknesses. He called it maintaining discipline, Holden said from the witness stand. Said the army had gone soft, that we needed to remind people what military culture really meant. And I believed him, because he was a master sergeant with 26 years and a chest full of medals. I thought he knew what he was doing. And now? The prosecutor asked. Now I know he was just a predator with a rank insignia. Kramer and the other two got 3 years each, all dishonorable discharges, all reduced to private. Holloway's trial was scheduled for 60 days out. His civilian attorney filed motion after motion, tried to get evidence suppressed, tried to get the case dismissed, tried to argue that Holloway was being scapegoated for systemic failures. Judge Colonel Patricia Morrison denied every motion, set trial date, made it clear there would be no delays. Master Sergeant Holloway, she said during one hearing, you spent 26 years in uniform. You know how military justice works. You know that evidence obtained lawfully is admissible. You know that conspiracy charges don't require direct proof of every single act. And you know that your rank and your service record don't exempt you from accountability. So stop wasting this court's time and prepare for trial. Holloway's attorney tried one more approach, offered a plea deal. Holloway would plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for testimony against Grant. The prosecutor brought the offer to Maya. What do you think, Chief? Maya thought about 43 victims, about Private Chen bleeding out in the desert, about Walsh waking up every night thinking someone was watching. No deal, she said. He goes to trial, he gets convicted. He serves every day of his sentence. Even if it means Grant might walk? Grant's not walking. We have Holloway's records. We have the ledger. We have witness testimony. We don't need Holloway to flip. We just need him to go away. The prosecutor nodded. I'll tell the judge. The trial date held. Holloway would face a jury in 6 weeks. In the meantime, Maya finished her audit report. 173 pages. Documentation of every failure, every violation, every systemic flaw that had allowed the conspiracy to flourish. She submitted it to Inspector General Chen at 0900 on a Tuesday morning. Chen read it in one sitting. Then she called Maya into her office. This is damning, Chen said. Yes, ma'am. You're recommending a complete overhaul of training protocols, command structure, and oversight mechanisms? Yes, ma'am. That's going to cost money, political capital, time. Less than it cost Private Chen. Less than it cost 43 victims. Less than it'll cost the next soldier if we don't fix it. Chen set the report down. The Secretary of Defense is going to read this. So is Congress. They're going to ask questions, hard questions, about how this happened, about who knew, about why it took 8 days and 1 investigator to uncover what should have been obvious to everyone. Good. Let them ask. Let them squirm. Maybe it'll motivate them to actually fix things. You're not worried about backlash? From who? The people who failed to protect soldiers? Let them come after me. I've got documentation. Chen smiled. Actually smiled. You know what, Chief? I'm going to recommend you for a position with my office. We need investigators who aren't afraid to burn down broken systems. Thank you, ma'am, but no. No? I didn't do this to get promoted. I did it because soldiers were dying and no one cared. Now people care. My job's done. So, what's next for you? Maya thought about that. I don't know, but I know I'm not done serving. Just need to figure out where I can do the most good. Chen stood, extended her hand. Wherever that is, Chief, they're lucky to have you. Maya shook her hand, rolled toward the door, stopped. Ma'am, that position you mentioned, I'm not interested. But I know someone who might be. Who? Specialist Angela Rodriguez. She's smart, she's brave, and she understands what it's like to be failed by the system. She'd make a hell of an investigator. Chen made a note. I'll reach out to her. Maya left, rolled across the base one last time as an active investigator. Her work here was done. The dominoes had fallen. The trials were proceeding. The system was changing, but something was still missing. She found Specialist Rodriguez in the training bay, running medical drills with a new class of trainees, showing them proper tourniquet application, correcting form, encouraging them. Maya watched from the doorway, saw how the trainees listened to Rodriguez, really listened. Because she'd been where they were. She knew what it meant to be vulnerable, to be scared, to need someone to believe in you. Rodriguez finished the drill, dismissed the class, saw Maya waiting. Chief Reeves, she said, smiled. I heard your report went to the Secretary of Defense. It did. Think they'll actually change things? I think they don't have a choice anymore. Too many people watching. Too much pressure. They either fix it or admit they don't care, and politicians hate admitting they don't care. Rodriguez laughed. That's cynical. That's realistic. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Rodriguez spoke quietly. I got a call from Inspector General Chen. She said you recommended me for a position with her office. I did. Why? Maya looked at her, saw the young specialist who'd been terrified 3 weeks ago, who'd filmed evidence because she was too scared to speak up directly, who'd found courage anyway. Because you've got something most investigators don't have, Maya said. You know what it feels like to not be believed, to be told you're exaggerating, to watch people look away when you need help. That empathy, that understanding, it's going to make you better at this job than someone who's never experienced it. Rodriguez's eyes filled. What if I'm not ready? No one's ever ready. You just decide you're going to do it anyway. Like you did. Like I did. Rodriguez nodded, wiped her eyes. Then I guess I'm doing it. Good. Because the system needs people like you. People who've survived it and want to fix it. That's how change happens. Not from the top down, from the inside out. Maya started to roll away. Rodriguez called after her. Chief! Thank you for everything. For believing me, for fighting for me. For showing me that silence isn't safety. Maya looked back. You showed yourself, Specialist. I just gave you a reason to believe it was possible. That night, Maya sat in her temporary quarters and wrote one final letter. To Lieutenant Sarah Mackenzie, the woman who'd left the army broken 6 years ago. Dear Sarah, the letter began. You don't know me, but I know your story. I know what was done to you. I know why you withdrew your complaint. And I know why you left. I'm writing to tell you that the men who destroyed you have been arrested. That 43 other victims have come forward. That the system that failed you is finally being held accountable. I'm not asking you to testify. I'm not asking you to relive trauma. I'm just asking you to know that you weren't wrong. You weren't weak. You were a soldier who tried to do the right thing in a system designed to punish people for doing the right thing. And that system is changing. Because of you. Because you tried. Even though it cost you everything. Thank you for being brave enough to file that complaint. Even if they made you withdraw it. Even if no one listened. You started this, and now, finally, it's ending. She signed it, sealed it, sent it. Didn't know if Mackenzie would read it. Didn't know if it would help. But she knew that every victim deserved to know their pain had mattered, their courage had mattered, even when the system said it didn't. The next morning, Colonel Vance found Maya at the training facility one last time. "Your orders came through," Vance said. "You're being reassigned. DoD wants you to lead a new initiative, adaptive combat medicine training, building programs for wounded warriors to become elite instructors." Maya looked up. "That's not an investigative position." "No, it's a leadership position. They want you to take everything you learned here and use it to create something better. Something that doesn't fail people." "Why me?" "Because you've proven that disability doesn't mean incapacity. Because you've shown that the best teachers are often the ones who've survived the hardest lessons. And because soldiers need to see that service doesn't end when you get wounded. It evolves." Maya thought about Private Chen, about Rodriguez, about every soldier who'd been told they weren't good enough, weren't strong enough, weren't worthy. "When do I start?" 60 days, after Holloway's trial. They want you there for the verdict. "I'll be there." Vance handed her a folder. "One more thing. The Chen family reached out, Private David Chen's parents. They want to meet you." Maya's hands stilled on the folder. "They know what happened," Vance continued. "They know their son died because of negligent training, and they want to thank you for making sure it meant something." "Thank me?" Maya's voice was hollow. "I didn't save him." "No, but you made sure he wasn't forgotten, that his death wasn't buried in paperwork and excuses. That's worth something, Chief. To them, it's worth everything." Maya opened the folder, saw a photograph. Private David Chen, in uniform. 21 years old, bright smile, whole life ahead of him. Gone because someone said, "Good enough." "I'll meet them," she said quietly. "I owe them that much." "You don't owe them anything, Chief. They want to thank you." "Then I owe it to myself." The meeting happened 3 days later. Chen's parents drove from California, brought his sister. They sat across from Maya in a quiet office, and they cried. "We knew something was wrong," Chen's mother said. "When he came home on leave, he said his training was rushed, that his instructors didn't care, that it was just checking boxes." She wiped her eyes. "We told him to report it. He said it wouldn't matter, that soldiers don't question instructors." "He was wrong," Maya said. "Soldiers should question instructors, especially when their lives depend on it." "But he didn't know that," Chen's father said. "And now he's gone, and we'll never get him back." Maya had no words for that, no comfort to offer, just the truth. "Your son deserved better," she said. "He deserved instructors who cared, a system that protected him, leaders who valued his life over their metrics. He didn't get any of that, and I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry." Chen's sister spoke. She was younger, maybe 19. "Will this stop it? Will what you did keep other families from losing their sons?" Maya met her eyes. "I hope so. I can't promise it, but I can promise that we're trying, that we're changing things, that your brother's death meant something." "It meant everything to us," the mother whispered. "I know," Maya said, "and I'll make sure it means something to the army, too." They talked for an hour, shared stories. Chen's parents told Maya about their son, his dreams, his love for his country, his belief that service mattered. When they left, they hugged her, thanked her, told her she was a hero. Maya didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a soldier who'd arrived too late to save someone who'd needed saving. But she'd make sure she was on time for the next one. That night, alone in her quarters, Maya allowed herself to cry. For Chen, for Rodriguez, for Mackenzie, for every soldier who'd been failed by people who should have protected them. And then she dried her eyes, squared her shoulders, and started planning for the new program. For the wounded warriors who would become instructors. For the system that would value survival over conformity. Because that's what warriors do. They fight, they grieve, they heal. And then they fight again. Holloway's trial began on a Tuesday morning in November. The courtroom was packed. Victims filled the gallery. Reporters lined the back wall. Military brass sat stone-faced in the front row. Maya rolled in last, positioned herself where Holloway would have to see her, where every time he looked up, he'd be reminded of the woman he'd thought was vulnerable. The prosecution opened strong, played recordings from the burner phone, read text messages aloud, showed the ledger with 43 names and dollar amounts. Master Sergeant Frank Holloway didn't just commit crimes, the prosecutor said. He weaponized trust. He took the authority granted to him by the United States Army and used it to terrorize, extort, and silence soldiers who had nowhere else to turn. And he did it for 6 years, systematically, deliberately, without remorse. Holloway's attorney tried the only defense he had left, claimed his client was following orders, that the command climate at Fort Carson encouraged aggressive discipline, that Holloway was a scapegoat for institutional failures. Master Sergeant Holloway served this country for 26 years, the defense attorney said, earned 2 Bronze Stars and a Silver Star, trained thousands of soldiers, and now, in the twilight of his career, he's being sacrificed to cover up the real problem, a military that doesn't know how to handle complaints without destroying careers. The prosecution called its first witness, Specialist Angela Rodriguez. She walked to the stand in her dress uniform, shoulders back, eyes forward. Nothing like the terrified young woman who'd hidden in her barracks room 3 months ago. Specialist Rodriguez, the prosecutor said, can you tell the court what happened to you on August 3rd of this year? Rodriguez didn't look at Holloway, looked straight ahead. I was working late in the equipment bay. Staff Sergeant Brennan and Sergeant First Class Webb came in. They locked the door. Told me that if I reported certain things I'd seen, improper equipment handling, safety violations, they would make sure I failed out of training. What did you do? I stayed quiet. I was scared. I'd seen what happened to other women who reported. They got transferred, disciplined, pushed out. Did you report the incident to anyone? No. Why not? Rodriguez finally looked at Holloway. Because I knew it wouldn't matter. I knew that Master Sergeant Holloway protected men like Brennan and Webb. I knew that even if I filed a complaint, it would disappear, just like all the others. How did you know that? Because Corporal Jennifer Walsh told me. She'd tried to report harassment 2 years earlier, filed proper paperwork, followed procedure. And then Master Sergeant Holloway called her into his office and showed her photographs. Personal photographs she didn't know existed. And he told her that unless she withdrew her complaint and paid him $3,000, those photographs would be sent to her command with a note saying she was soliciting. The defense attorney objected. Hearsay. The judge overruled it. Walsh had already given a sworn statement. This was corroboration. Rodriguez continued. Walsh paid, withdrew her complaint, and left the army broken. And when she told me that story, I knew I could never report anything, because the system wasn't designed to protect us. It was designed to protect them. And yet you're here now, testifying. Why? Rodriguez's voice was steady, strong. Because Chief Petty Officer Maya Reeves showed me that silence doesn't keep you safe. It only keeps predators powerful. And I'm done giving them that power. The courtroom was silent when Rodriguez stepped down. The prosecution called 9 more victims. Each one told their story. Each one pointed to Holloway. Each one described the same pattern. Report misconduct, get threatened, pay money or withdraw the complaint, disappear. By the 4th day of trial, Holloway's attorney stopped trying to discredit the victims, started trying to minimize the damage. My client made mistakes, he admitted in closing arguments. He used poor judgment. He crossed lines. But conspiracy? Organized criminal enterprise? That's not what this is. This is a senior NCO who got too comfortable with authority and made bad choices. That's not a federal crime. That's a failure of supervision. The prosecutor stood for rebuttal, didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. Defense counsel wants you to believe this was poor judgment. Let me remind you what poor judgment looks like. Poor judgment is forgetting to file paperwork. Poor judgment is being late to formation. Poor judgment is not 6 years of systematic blackmail, extortion, and witness intimidation, resulting in 43 victims, hundreds of thousands of dollars in illegal payments, and at least 1 dead soldier. He paused. Let that sink in. Master Sergeant Holloway didn't make mistakes. He ran a criminal organization. He recruited other NCOs. He taught them how to identify vulnerable targets. He provided them protection in exchange for loyalty. And when anyone threatened to expose him, he crushed them. Not with violence, with fear, with leverage, with the very authority the Army gave him to protect soldiers. The prosecutor looked directly at Holloway. The defense is right about one thing. This is a failure of supervision, but not the kind they mean. This is what happens when supervisors fail to supervise themselves, when they confuse authority with immunity, when they forget that power without accountability is just tyranny in uniform. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Maya sat outside the courtroom. Rodriguez sat next to her. Colonel Vance stood nearby. None of them spoke, just waited. When the bailiff called them back, Maya rolled into the courtroom, watched Holloway stand as the jury filed in, watched his face as the foreman stood. On the charge of conspiracy, we find the defendant guilty. Holloway's jaw tightened. On the charge of extortion, we find the defendant guilty. His hands gripped the table. On the charge of witness intimidation, we find the defendant guilty. His attorney touched his arm. Holloway shook him off. The foreman read through all 17 charges. Guilty on every count. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. Holloway was remanded to custody immediately. As the MPs moved toward him, he turned, looked directly at Maya. This won't change anything, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You think one trial fixes the system? You're naive. Maya held his gaze, didn't flinch. Maybe, but you're still going to prison, and that's a start. They let him out. He didn't look back. Rodriguez let out a breath she'd been holding for months. It's really over. This part is, Maya said. Now comes the hard part. Actually fixing things. 2 weeks later, Holloway was sentenced to 15 years confinement. Dishonorable discharge, forfeiture of all pay, allowances, and retirement benefits. The judge added one more condition. Master Sergeant Holloway, or rather, Private Holloway, as that's your rank now, you will serve your sentence at the United States Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth. And every year of your confinement, You will be required to attend sessions where survivors of military sexual trauma and harassment share their stories. You will listen. You will not speak. You will understand exactly what you did to 43 people. That is this court's order. Holloway's face went white. 15 years of listening to the pain he'd caused. 15 years of accountability he couldn't escape. Maya allowed herself a small smile. Justice looked good on him. 3 months later, Maya stood in front of a new facility at Fort Carson. Not the old training complex. A new building, purpose-built, designed for accessibility. Ramps instead of stairs. Wide doors. Equipment modified for every body type. The sign above the entrance read, Adaptive Combat Medicine Training Center, in memory of Private David Chen. Chen's parents stood next to her. His mother held a folded flag. His father's hand rested on Maya's wheelchair. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for making sure David's death meant something." Maya looked at the building, thought about the 23 instructors already hired, all of them wounded warriors, all of them told they couldn't serve anymore, all of them proving that wrong every single day. "Your son deserved better," Maya said. "This won't bring him back, but maybe it'll keep someone else from losing their child to negligence disguised as discipline." Chen's mother wiped her eyes. "He would have liked this. He always said the best teachers were the ones who'd survived what they were teaching." He was right. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was small. No politicians, no press, just soldiers, the ones who mattered. Colonel Vance made brief remarks, talked about transformation, about learning from failures, about building something better. Then she introduced Maya. "Chief Petty Officer Reeves came to Fort Carson 8 months ago. She was assaulted, harassed, threatened, and she could have walked away, filed her report, let someone else fix it. Instead, she fought. Not just for herself, for every soldier who'd been failed by this system, for every victim who'd been silenced, for every person who needed the military to be better than it was." Maya rolled forward, looked out at the assembled soldiers, saw Rodriguez in the front row, now wearing the insignia of a DoD investigator. Saw other faces, trainees from the new program, instructors who'd survived their own battles, people who'd learned that strength came in forms the Army had never bothered to measure. "8 months ago," Maya said, 3 men kicked my wheelchair and thought they'd won. They thought disability meant weakness. They thought silence meant acceptance. They were wrong on both counts. But here's the thing. They weren't unique. They were symptoms of a culture that valued conformity over capability, that measured worth by physical standards instead of mental toughness, that confused compliance with competence. She paused, let the words settle. This facility exists because that culture failed, because soldiers died, because victims were silenced, because people in power chose to protect institutions instead of individuals. We can't change the past. Private Chen is still gone. 43 people still carry scars from what was done to them. But we can change what happens next. Maya gestured to the building behind her. This center will train wounded warriors to become combat medicine instructors, not despite their injuries, because of them. Because someone who's triaged their own wounds under fire understands pressure in ways no textbook can teach. Because someone who's fought to recover from catastrophic injury understands resilience better than someone who's never been tested. Because the best teachers are the ones who've survived the lesson. She looked directly at a young corporal in the front row, recent amputee, still adjusting to his prosthetic, still uncertain if he had a future in the military. "Your service didn't end when you got wounded," Maya said to him. "It evolved. And if you want to be part of this evolution, We have a place for you. Not as a charity case, not as inspiration, as an instructor, as a warrior, as someone who has value, not despite what happens to you, but because of what you survived. The corporal's eyes filled. He nodded once. Maya continued. This facility will also implement new protocols. Zero tolerance for harassment, immediate investigation of complaints, victim support that actually supports victims instead of protecting institutions, and regular audits by independent investigators who report directly to DOD, not to local command. She looked at Colonel Vance. Colonel Vance has committed to full transparency. Every complaint filed, every investigation opened, every outcome documented. No more disappeared paperwork. No more silenced victims. No more institutional protection for individual predators. Vance nodded. That's a promise, in writing, with consequences if we fail. Maya rolled closer to the ribbon, held the ceremonial scissors. We're cutting this ribbon today, but we're doing more than opening a building. We're opening a door for every soldier who's been told they're not good enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough. That door says you belong. You matter, and your service counts. She cut the ribbon. The crowd applauded. And for the first time since she'd arrived at Fort Carson, Maya felt like the mission was actually complete. 6 months later, the Adaptive Combat Medicine Training Center had certified 53 new instructors, all wounded warriors. All told they couldn't serve anymore, all proving that assessment wrong. Specialist Rodriguez, now Special Agent Rodriguez, had completed 12 investigations across 4 bases, uncovered 2 more harassment networks, brought 23 people to justice. Lieutenant Sarah Mackenzie, the woman who'd left the Army broken 6 years earlier, had written Maya a letter. A real letter, on paper, mailed to Fort Carson. Dear Chief Reeves, it read. I got your letter 6 months ago. I didn't respond because I didn't know what to say. Thank you seemed inadequate. Your welcome seemed presumptuous. I'm sorry felt empty. So I said nothing. But I'm saying something now. I'm saying that for 6 years I've lived with the belief that I was weak, that I gave up, that I let them win. Your letter told me something different. It told me that I started something. That my complaint, even though it was withdrawn, even though it went nowhere, mattered. That it was part of a pattern that eventually led to accountability. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if my pain actually meant something, but I know that believing it might have means I can finally sleep without waking up scared. So thank you for fighting, for winning, for making sure the next Sarah Mackenzie doesn't have to leave the Army to escape predators. You gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope. And for that, I will always be grateful. Maya read the letter 3 times. Then she filed it carefully in a folder labeled, Why This Matters, because on the hard days, when the bureaucracy was slow and the resistance was strong and the change felt impossible, she needed to remember. She needed to know that every fight, every document, every hour spent building something better actually mattered to real people with real pain. The calls kept coming. Soldiers from other bases, other branches, people who'd heard about Fort Carson, who wanted to know if change was possible at their installations, if they could report without being destroyed, if the system could actually protect them. Maya answered every call, made notes, passed information to Inspector General Chen, watched as the investigation spread, as the network of accountability grew, as the culture slowly, painfully began to shift. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't fast, but it was happening. 1 year after Maya had rolled onto Fort Carson and been kicked to the ground by men who thought she was helpless, She stood, metaphorically, in front of a room full of generals and admirals. Well, she sat, but the point stood. The Secretary of Defense had requested a briefing on the Adaptive Combat Medicine Initiative, wanted to know if it was working, if it could be expanded, if the model was sustainable. Maya presented the data. 53 certified instructors, 98% training completion rate, 0 harassment complaints, 0 equipment failures in the field traced to inadequate training, and one statistic that made the generals sit up. Soldiers trained by wounded warrior instructors showed 40% better performance under stress than soldiers trained by traditional instructors. Why? The secretary asked. Because our instructors have been there, Maya said simply. They've bled, they've been scared. They've had to adapt and overcome in ways traditional instructors never have. So when they teach survival, not theory, not textbook procedures. Real world, this is what actually works when everything goes wrong training. Can we scale this? Yes, but only if you're willing to change how you think about disability. If you're willing to admit that someone in a wheelchair can teach better than someone who's never been tested. If you're willing to invest in people instead of just protocols. The secretary looked at his staff. I want this implemented Army-wide within 18 months, Navy and Air Force within 24. I want every combat medicine training program to include wounded warrior instructors. I want the standard to be competence, not conformity. He looked back at Maya. Chief Reeves, you've proven that the military's greatest resource isn't the people who've never been broken. It's the people who've broken and rebuilt themselves stronger. Thank you for showing us what we should have known all along. Maya left that briefing knowing something fundamental had changed. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough that the next soldier who got wounded wouldn't be told their service was over. Enough that the next victim who reported harassment wouldn't be destroyed for speaking truth. Enough that the next Maya Reeves wouldn't have to get kicked to the ground to prove her worth. 2 years after it all began, Maya returned to Fort Carson one last time. Not as an investigator, not as a program director, as a guest. The facility was hosting a ceremony honoring Rodriguez, who'd just been promoted to Senior Special Agent, the youngest in DoD Inspector General history. Rodriguez saw Maya and smiled. Approached with confidence Maya remembered from the trial, but hadn't seen in that first terrified phone call. Chief, Rodriguez said, thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it. You've earned this. I learned from the best. No, Maya said. You learned from your own courage. I just gave you a reason to trust it. Rodriguez crouched down next to the wheelchair. Can I tell you something? That first day, when Brennan and Webb locked me in that storage room, I thought about quitting. Just giving up. Leaving the Army. Starting over somewhere they couldn't hurt me. What stopped you? I didn't know then, but I know now. It was the thought that somewhere, someday, another scared specialist would need someone to have stayed. Someone to have fought. Someone to have proven that speaking up wasn't suicide. I stayed so she wouldn't have to be alone. Maya's throat tightened. And now you're the person who makes sure she isn't. Because of you. Because of you, Maya corrected. I documented. You testified. You put yourself on that stand knowing Holloway's people might retaliate. That took more courage than anything I did. Rodriguez stood. We both did what we had to, and it worked. That's what matters. The ceremony started. They gave Rodriguez her new credentials. The Inspector General himself flew in to present them. made a speech about courage and integrity and the future of military justice. When it was over, Maya rolled outside, found a quiet spot, looked at the building where it had all started. Bay 3, where 3 men had kicked her wheelchair, where she'd fought back from the ground, where the whole thing had begun. A young private approached. Couldn't have been more than 19, fresh out of basic, new to the base. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said. "Are you Chief Reeves?" Maya turned. "I am. I just wanted to say thank you. My sister was at Fort Hood 2 years ago. She was harassed by her supervisor. She reported it. And for the first time in military history, they actually investigated, actually held people accountable. She told me it was because of what you did here." "Because you proved that the system could work if someone forced it to." Maya didn't know what to say to that. Didn't have words for the weight of knowing your pain might have prevented someone else's. "Is your sister still serving?" she finally asked. "Yes, ma'am. She's a sergeant now, training other soldiers, telling them they have a voice, that using it won't destroy them." "Then thank her for me, for staying, for trusting that change was possible." The private saluted, walked away. Maya sat alone as the sun set over Fort Carson. Thought about the 8 days she'd spent being harassed, the night she'd been kicked to the ground, the trials, the victims, the survivors, the change. Thought about Private Chen, who deserved better. About Rodriguez, who found courage. About Mackenzie, who finally found peace. About 43 victims, who finally found justice. And about 3 men who'd thought kicking a wheelchair made them powerful. They'd been wrong, and they'd learned exactly how wrong in the hardest way possible. Maya pulled out her phone, looked at her last message from Inspector General Chen. New investigation needed in Germany, harassment network, possible command involvement. Interested? Maya typed back, "When do I leave?" Because the work wasn't done. It would never be done. But every investigation, every exposure, every predator brought to justice made it a little bit harder for the next one to operate. And that was enough. Not perfect, not complete, but enough. Maya Reeves had come to Fort Carson in a wheelchair and left it transformed. Not the wheelchair, the base, the system, the culture. She'd proven that strength wasn't measured by height, but by heart. That disability didn't mean defeat. That silence wasn't safety. And that accountability, real accountability, was possible if someone was brave enough to demand it. 3 men had kicked her wheelchair thinking she was vulnerable. They'd learned she was a warrior. And warriors don't need to stand to win. They just need to refuse to quit. The chair never defined the fight defined the warrior. And Maya Reeves had just shown the entire military what a real warrior looked like. When the world finally stopped measuring worth by whether you could walk, and started measuring it by whether you could endure, adapt, overcome, and force broken systems to become better. She wasn't done. The mission continued, but Fort Carson would never forget the woman who rolled in silently and left it forever changed.